Weekly Download, a podcast about interesting games, industry news.
Brought to you by Big Games Machine.
I accidentally started the DeLorean spinning before the start of this.
Yeah.
And you're like, as you're going to see, like on Love is Blind, the reason they all have gold cups is so they can edit more clearly, so you don't know how much they've drunk in any given moment.
We're going to know every
exactly
time.
where you are.
Yeah.
In the running order, depending on how the DeLorean is rotated.
Until it stops. Until it stops. Like it might stop by the end of the show.
Or it may never, and I've invented perpetual motion.
Yes. That is, and if that is the case, then you might never hear from us again.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's a very long-winded way of saying hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the Weekly Download, brought to you by Big Games Machine. To anyone who's listening rather than watching and has no context to any of that, Alex, can you briefly explain?
Can we start the audio version at a different point, maybe?
This is all part of the experience. What?
Yes. I have a very heavily Legoed background. I think we both do, but mine's kind of more visible on camera. And I recently got a DeLorean. It's not in my list of things I get from Lego, but I needed to buy something because I had a code that was going to expire. Needed to buy something because I had a code that was going to expire. So I bought a DeLorean. This is so I could get the Pokemon Center before that ran out. And I decided that because it's got a mode where you can put the wheels down like it's flying through the air, I've suspended it from the roof like a child.
With string.
Not like
you
I
have.
Suspended.
Yeah. You have. And it is going to keep spinning. But that's the context to anyone who's listening. If you're new here and we're I think we're over 2 minutes in and we've not actually introduced what's going on. Sorry. This is the Weekly Download. It's our weekly podcast where we look at some of the biggest stories in the industry. We have a little chat about them. Alex and I share our thoughts. And we cover a few different stories every week. And then we have a few fun ones at the end. We don't usually talk about the DeLorean. We do normally talk about Resident Evil. We will be talking about Capcom today. We'll be looking at some Capcom it's earnings season, so a lot of what we've been looking at in the last few weeks is to do with earnings. We've looked at Capcom before, we'll look at Capcom again. We're also going to be looking at some news around Double Fine Productions of Kiln more recently, but Psychonauts fame, obviously part of Microsoft as well. They're a Microsoft-owned studio. And then the last story we'll also be jumping around to is around Stellar Blade developer Shift Up. Sony published Stellar Blade. It was a PS5, but now Shift Up are in a position where they're moving towards self-publishing. So we'll have a little look at that and what that potentially might mean for its future games. But that's kind of where we're looking today. Alex, do you have any thoughts before we dive in that aren't about the Lego DeLorean?
No. I'm excited to get in some of these. Like, I think it's an interesting collection of stories, and mostly quite positive, which is always nice.
Yeah. Nice and positive. So we'll take a small break, and we'll come back and we'll jump into this news around Double Fine. And we are going to kick off this week's episode with this first story around Double Fine Productions. Like we said before, very well known for Psychonauts. They've always been a bit on the more bizarre and I kind of think cult classic side of the industry. But Double Fine this week have officially voted to unionise alongside the Communications Workers of America. That's 42 regular and part-time workers filed the petition. And this makes Double Fine the latest interestingly, I think, quite a few Microsoft-owned studios now have moved towards unionisation. ID Software both did so over the last year.
It's id. I think
it is. It is. Sorry. id Software. And I know that's right because you've brought that up. You've brought me up for that before. But I do apologise. Yes, ZeniMax id Software. Microsoft itself in this is maintaining this neutrality agreement. So it's not going to get involved in opposing the unionization process, really stumbling through that one. But yeah, I think I don't know, Alex. To me, the thing that I'm immediately looking at here is the fact that we're getting a few Microsoft-owned studios which are really doing this now, and I'm kind of wondering, is that because Microsoft is allowing it to happen, and that would make it a good presence in this for some, in some ways, or is this the opposite, and it's actually a lot of workers within these studios are quite fearful of what might happen, so they're pushing for unionization to help solve that, I guess.
Would imagine that there's a lot of things going on here, and I really need to learn more about the process when it comes to unionization, but specifically where people are applying to here. But I think one of the things is that these are smaller studios under a larger owner that partly are fearful because they're seeing what's going on and they want to protect their jobs or have security, I should say, because it doesn't necessarily protect their jobs, but it gives them security and certainty in what happens if they do lose their jobs. And also because they're smaller studios under there, I suspect it's easier for them to unionize because they can get enough people on board from within the percentage and everybody kind of coming in through that same fear. And I think especially with what they will have seen through the like Toys for Bob and some other studios being cut by Microsoft. I think Toys for Bob was one of theirs.
Yeah, I mean, like Tango as well. I know Tango now exists in a new form, but you think they worked on Hi-Fi Rush. Critically, that was really successful. Obviously, we don't know the specifics sale-wise, and it was on Game Pass, but I don't think it's a coincidence that this happened quite soon after they released Kiln, and which came out a few weeks ago. And again, like you said, it's hard to, there's so much to this, and there'll be so many reasons why they have chose to do this. Part of me does wonder if there's a degree of, hey, we're not working on, we've released that game now, so it's come out a few weeks ago. If we do it now, it makes sure that if Microsoft try and restructure a little bit or something like that, they are protected. I don't know if that's me reading too much into the timing, though.
I think it's probably somewhere between the two. Like, I don't think you're wrong. Like, when you look at some of the companies, studios that Microsoft has cut, it has been soon after a launch. Equally, my understanding is, unless they've changed the company structure, I haven't been keeping a very close eye on Double Fine. They've always had a few projects running at once. They quite famously were one of the first places to like run game jams and then spin ideas out of those stacked. And I can't remember the name of their weird hybrid World War II mech game, but they kind of were all in development at the same time. And famously, like, they were the first kind of breakout hit on Kickstarter that proved all that was possible. So I think they're quite used to being. And that was what ended up being Broken Age. I think they're quite used to having independence, and I think that probably comes through in part of that. And they're probably so. I don't think they'll put all of their eggs into Kiln, if you see what I mean.
They were acquired in 2018, 2019.
It's been a while, hasn't it? Because that was when they had the whole thing around where will Psychonauts 2 end up being. And
June 2019.
Yeah, because they couldn't port it to PlayStation 5 in the end, so you could play it on PlayStation, but only the PlayStation 4 version. Yeah, because it was.
I mean, to your point, we had Kiln a few weeks ago. They also released Keeper at the back end of last year, and I think they're both quite small experiences. I think if you look a bit further back, and again, I'm supporting your point here, don't worry. Psychonauts 2 2021, and then Rad, which I played, that was a much smaller experience, again, a few years before. So I understand where you're coming from in terms of they probably definitely will have other projects in the work, and I imagine that Microsoft might have them looking at something a bit bigger. But then again, the point that you've said, they have a very independent studio, so how much I feel like Microsoft leave them alone.
I think it would be a mistake. What do I know compared to Microsoft? But I would think like Microsoft needs to fill up the pipeline if they want the Game Pass to feel like an offer. And I think Double Fine spitting out high quality experimental projects helps with that. The problem is I don't think any of their games have done especially well in the last 5 or so years.
I guess it probably depends what
critically
the budgets are, though, doesn't it?
To be clear on that as well.
Yeah. I think you're right. They are a very good example of a studio that I think are considered a bit of a darling within the
Absolutely.
industry. I think you hear the name Double Fine, and even if it's more nostalgic perhaps, but you do associate them with good games, and I think it makes sense that they're a good example of in the nicest way possible, because I really do like a few of their games, but they're never going to be the main attraction on something like Game Pass. But for people, I think, who are willing to try out new stuff, they're a very useful studio to have to just keep adding games to that catalog. And I think the last question I came with when we were looking at this story was, I wonder if there is a degree of just feeling a bit vulnerable now that we're seeing Microsoft cut a lot of studios and seem to be very much focused on delivering high profit margins, on kind of keeping costs low, on recouping a lot of money from their investments. But then is the flip side of that a lot of the games are quite low budgets. I don't look at a lot of what they do and think that they'll be breaking the bank to do it. So, but we don't know what those numbers look like, do we?
I mean, I will, the kind of where some expense might come in, I imagine they prototype, build a lot, and pick up the ones that work, which is why their games tend to be like darlings, like indie darlings, but
and
darlings.
Like normally quite not system based, but I feel like very heavily built around a concept,
an idea,
like a gameplay concept, rather than, hey, let's build a world. And I guess
Absolutely.
that, like as you said, that comes from the fact that they do go out and experiment on stuff. And because I think Kiln's a bit weird, but I like that kind of weird. It's a bit different.
Kind of sits in that Splatoon space, doesn't it? It's what it reminds me.
Probably
of,
a bit less successful at the moment, but definitely that. But that's that ability to experiment, isn't it? And if we come back to this story as it is, I think that, good for them. The unionizing does help them have more protections and hopefully keeps them in a position where they can experiment. And I just, again, to pick that point, to me, I do think it's really interesting that we're seeing a lot of Microsoft studios do this. Not just, obviously, I get that Bethesda's technically first party, but and I know we spoke about this very recently. Bethesda still feels quite, it's a first party, but it's like a second party kind of thing, whereas Double Fine is very much, they're Double Fine, and then there's Microsoft.
Yeah, it's very much, But I think Microsoft, not blocking these things is likely what's driving a lot of it. Like, more power to Microsoft for allowing that, I guess, is part of the point here. Not allowing it, that's the wrong term, but not being resistant to it in the way we see from a lot of the other union conversations we have.
Yeah, no, true. And I know we spoke about it last week. Another good example of Microsoft doing something right. And it's not, they're not being gracious here by blocking it, or by not blocking it. It's kind of like, okay, there's the respect between the studios and the publisher there. But again, Microsoft doing good things. And I think that people notice these kind of things. So
not doing bad things.
But I'm thinking of, from just that corporate perspective, it's a very easy way to, because as we've known and we've spoken about before, unionizing is a very sticky business for publishers, for studios, and it's easy to get it wrong, it's easy to get it right sometimes. But so we'll break here, and then when we come back, we will be moving from Xbox and Microsoft to Sony and Shift Up. And we are back with our second story of the day, and this is the news that Stellar Blade developer Shift Up is moving away from its publishing partnership / relationship with Sony. So Shift Up is transitioning to a first-party model, and one of the reasons which
a third party even,
yes. One of the, getting all my different parties.
I'm paying attention, sir.
No,
did you mean
I did that one to catch you out. I did that one to catch you out, and you got it. But one of the reasonings behind this was about them being able to market their games more, not properly necessarily, but more reflective of what they are, which is interesting. I'm not necessarily. I mean, the quote that I've pulled reflects the distinctive identity of the IP. Not sure if that's specifically talking about Stellar Blade and Stellar Blade 2, but it makes me think.
Yeah.
I like to, one more thing I'll say just before I open it up, just for a bit more context. Shift Up did recently go public. They also acquired Unbound, which is the new studio from Alex, one of your favorite people in the industry, presumably, Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami. So part of me wonders if this, again, I'm speaking about timings again, but I wonder if the timing of this is to demonstrate, hey, we've gone public, we're trying to broaden our offering and what we are and what we do. But yeah, it's Sony, I guess, it'll obviously come to PS5 or PS6 whenever it launches. That relationship, that leg up that I imagine Sony gave them, they probably look now and think we don't need it anymore, which I guess is good for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure it will have an interesting effect on everything around it. Like, obviously, being able to be on Xbox and possibly Switch as well is going to expand their user base. I don't know if that means they'll have more control over how they advertise it on PC. I would say it's an interesting thing to advertise their game in a way that, because obviously it had a whole furore around how the lead character was portrayed. And I wonder which side of that they feel they wanted to portray more authentically to their original vision.
I think without getting into it,
please, I didn't want to get into it, but it was more...
No, that's why I brought that point up, because I think it's very interesting to.
Yeah.
I do remember obviously the kind of things you're talking about. I think, was it 2024 the Blade came out? Is that how old it is?
Yeah, that sounds right.
There was a lot of hubbub around obviously the presentation of the main character and these things around censorship in some of the early updates and patches to the game. So I think that definitely, again, we can only speculate. I think it does raise questions about that partially being the reason. But then a lot of me thinks that this decision to go alone that's kind of just a point to justify why they're doing it that doesn't really add up that much. I just think it's a bigger slice of the pie. I think that not having Sony involved so they get more money. I think that we're seeing a real explosion from Korean and especially Chinese studios as well, who are having a lot of success, not just in their own countries and the region, but in the West as well. And they're thinking, we don't need the Western expertise to get into those markets. We can bring our own people in-house to help with that. We can go and do that on our own, and we can reach those audiences without Sony. And I imagine any position where you're having to make a game exclusive for a year, they might turn around and think, okay, we'll trade the expertise we might still need, but we get the game on, as you said, Alex, Xbox, Switch, PC on day one.
I think there's another side to that, which is it's a lot easier to make that once your IP is established. I think you would be crazy to turn down a Sony publishing deal for your game.
For anyone listening, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. I think you need that first success for it to make any sense. But once you've got an established IP, the rolling of that ball gets a lot easier as you try and build momentum for your launch. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we actually tracked all the way back to Demon Souls with From Software, right? Because that first deal was an absolute nightmare. I think they had like 2 or 3 publishers for that game, one different one in each region, which means that it can only be on PlayStation because it was published by Sony in Japan, but nowhere else. So you end up in these weird conflicts. Yeah, it was Namco Bandai in the West, or at least in Europe. I think it might have been somebody else in America. Like, it was a really odd little thing. I think I'm going to stop presuming from there because I know those two. I feel like Atlas was involved in somewhere else.
So Shift Up are doing the opposite of that. They're saying, hey, we don't want 4 publishers. We just want one. We just want us.
They're actually, it's more like they don't want that confusion over their IP down the line. Like they're taking control because they have that option now.
Yeah, because I'm not, again, I can't, I'd have to double check this, but I do wonder if if Stellar Blade, the first game, I wonder if they published that in South Korea. I presume not, but potentially. But yeah, I think this is good. As I said, it's always good to see more studios being able to stand up on their own. I think it also implies that they must have really done well from not just the PS5 release, but I think the PC release as well. I think this kind of the confidence they've got to go and do things on their own now implies that it must have done really well. Which, whether you like the game or not, I think we want more games to be successful, and it's always good when they're outside of the traditional houses that we'll be talking about in a moment as
Absolutely.
it goes.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I think my last point on this would be, I wonder, again, and Tom's going to do his speculating, but obviously with Sony retreating on the PC side of things, I wonder if that's one of those things that they were umming and ahhing about whether what they wanted to do, whether they would work with Sony again. And, they're looking, hey, well, if you publish us, are we not going to release on PC now? And we definitely would want to do that. That's just speculating, but I wonder if that may have been a part of it, or they just were always going to do this. But yeah, I think unless you have anything to add, Alex, we'll move.
No, I think you're right. Like, I mean, I would have, in their situation, I think it makes sense to kind of break away. I'm sure they can still come up with an advertising deal to say first on PlayStation or whatever when the time comes if they want to. But
oh yeah, Sony handing them out like sweets, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
Anyone can get one of them. Not anyone. So imagine Nintendo rocking up and being like, "Do you want to do one for us?" Be like, "Never on PlayStation."
I bet they would.
Yeah.
Yeah, that way around, I suppose not.
Yeah. Star Fox, no. Switch 2 only. Unlucky Sony fans. But yeah, we'll break, and then when we come back, we'll get into Alex's favorite story of the week. I'm assuming, because we are going to be talking about Capcom and Resident Evil.
Yeah, Capcom. One day we're going to have a bad Capcom story.
And we are back for the penultimate time today to look at the news that Capcom have just reported their 9th consecutive year of record-breaking even profits. There's no baking. Were Capcom? No, they weren't Cooking Mama, were they? No, definitely not. I was really trying to reach for that. I was reaching around.
505?
But yeah, selling the record-breaking profits, but they've also sold more games this year than they've ever sold before.
I mean, that
if
would
we look
follow
at the numbers,
logically, right?
Well, potentially,
it
but
doesn't always,
profits
but
and
it should. Yeah.
It should, but quite an increase. So 59.07 million units this year, 51.87 million last year, which is, I'm not a mathematician, but that's quite a big jump. Resident Evil Requiem, 7 million units in its first couple of weeks, really driving that. And what I think is the best insight from this story is that nearly 84% of sales were from what we'd call catalog titles, so older games in franchises, RE4 remakes, Street Fighter 6, legacy games in the Monster Hunter series, and that being so high, such a high percentage, is because Capcom is very good at porting games to every platform and having deep discounts. I think if you ever look at any sale on eShop, PlayStation Store, Steam, Xbox, Epic, there's always great Capcom games for very cheap. So it's clearly a strategy that's working, and even though they're on sale, they're still making a lot of profit. So it's all around really impressive.
Yeah, it's interesting because they continue to put out some new games smattered in amongst the rest, right? But yeah, putting out games in a series, I think, Resident Evil is obviously especially good at that because it's one of the few games they've got that really has a narrative behind it, where it kind of like, oh, what did I miss kind of thing. You don't really get that with Monster Hunter if we're honest.
You got DMC, haven't you? But I think Resident Evil is probably the most heavy. Stories.
Yeah. So it's fantastic to see like a studio or rather a company that's kind of worked out its pipeline and is still willing to experiment on part of that and not just kind of like push away on the treadmill. Obviously, they've got gaggles of RE games in reserve. I'm sure they'll have another Monster Hunter next year. And the Street Fighter games will continue to form the backbone of everything they've got going on there. But Pragmata, obviously, and I always forget the name of this goddess game.
A Kinitsu Origami Path of the Goddess. I could not remember a single word after the one I was saying then. That was very much just piecing it together as it came in. But
they're all reviewing well, even if they're not selling well. So that's the fascinating part about that.
But then you think they can experiment with those smaller games because they have got this amazing catalogue. And I don't want to just repeat myself, but that nearly 84% being from older games, it would be interesting to see what that looks like for other studios and other publishers. I imagine Nintendo would be quite high with that as well, especially with how much they push the older Switch games.
I mean, it depends what you mean by back catalogue, right? Because I guess I'm going to take that back. In my head, I was like, but Mario Kart, it's still the same one. You just buy it. Is it catalog if it's the same game? But yeah.
I mean, I know you're less of a stickler for this than I am now. The thing that makes me a little bit sad, 93% of this is digital. Then I imagine that I think, again, this is something we've spoken about before, but I imagine they make so much through big sales on Steam.
Yeah.
Because they really discount stuff on Steam. So I'm not surprised by this 93% being digital. I think it's just kind of it's the industry now. I feel like we've seen, we've seen something else this week that we're going to talk about in the rundown. So I won't talk about that now. Just remembered. That's the story for later. But other things about digital downloads from other companies. But I think why is Capcom successful? I think we've spoken about that. But to me, they don't look to chase. They don't look to chase what's hot. They have franchises that are very well known that play. I know they kind of shift from game to the game, but they kind of play in a certain way. To me, Resident Evil, the games that I've played of that series, there's nothing else I've played quite like that. It's a very unique thing. I'd say the same with like Phoenix Wright. I'm very aware that it's just a visual novel, but it's a very distinct and unique take on it. And I think that's part of the success they have. And again, they can say they're all 80% off. Go and get them. And if you like them, then we've got a new one coming out next year. And I know with Monster Hunter, there's not a new game coming out in the foreseeable, but there's a big expansion for Wilds that's coming out next year. So you're seeing every 2 or 3 years, most of their biggest franchises are either getting DLC or they're getting new entries. Or I saw that Requiem released a new, I think like a roguelike mode a few days ago for free. So if it's not already a great game, then they're continuing to support it. So
I've only completed one run on it so far, but it's very good.
And is it good? It's good. There we go. We've got the official the Resident Evil.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who loves Resident Evil almost as much as me. Be like, I haven't played it yet. I'm like, you should. It's fun.
You should play it.
Yeah, it really makes me realize how much I truly enjoyed the gunplay in it. Which was, how you can enjoy a game and then you don't. When a game is at its best, you're not thinking about why you enjoy it. You're just having fun. And I never really stopped to realize just how good the combat was in it until I was in this kind of like completely combat focused.
Yeah, well, there's nothing else to worry about.
Yeah,
that's good to know. They're making. We say the same thing every time we speak about Capcom, but I think they're just a very good example of one of the companies that's doing things right. They aren't really making any big missteps. I think the last thing that I wanted to speak about was the fact that they're also now going more and more into the film and the TV and the anime side of things, and we're fingers crossed that they're going to be good. I'm assuming that's for
come on, the new Resident Evil movie. That's a whole different.
I think Capcom are one of the. I think we're seeing Nintendo and Sony really lead that charge to mixed results. But I think that's very intelligent from Capcom looking and thinking, I'd look at Mario with the new Mario movie, and even if that movie's of questionable quality, there's no doubt that that's going to have boosted the sale of probably every single Mario game on the Switch. And Alex,
when you say leading that charge, though, Capcom's been putting out Resident Evil movies since like the early 2000s.
Yeah, I know, but it feels like there's kind of a new generation of companies who are actually starting to do it right.
I think
to no disrespect to I feel like the early 2000s, like the early 2000s and 2010s, finding a logical plan for using video game IP in a transmedia way was not in the room. It was like, chuck out, someone's wrote a script for a Resident Evil movie. Should we make it?
Don't forget the first one was written by Romero, and then they said it was going to be too adult, and that's kind of sat in a vault somewhere. That you
for Dead Space?
No, for Resident Evil.
Oh, Resident Evil.
Yeah, and then it ended up with Paul Wes Anderson, and then they took that, and then also
we're just getting
Monster
all the
Hunter
trauma now.
also had Mia Jovovich in it. Yeah, I'm going to stop. We need to get me off video game
so
movies.
Good. But yeah, I feel like we're kind of in like a renaissance for those kind of things. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
But you are very right. This isn't a new thing, but it seems like the past 4 or 5 years we've really seen companies start doing it seriously and doing it right.
They're moving into what are they called? Prestige. Like a lot of these kind of prestige TV shows are kind of, obviously The Last of Us is there. There's talk about the God of War 1, BioShock still out there in the midst somewhere. The Twisted Metal series
the animated
isn't awful.
Thing. Which one?
The Twisted Metal show isn't awful.
I've not watched Twisted Metal.
It's on the BBC iPlayer. You can go and watch it today.
Shout out the BBC. But yeah, I think this is obviously more of not a success for you than me, but I think it's always good to see that the company that's making games that you like is doing well, and well done to Capcom. It might not surprise you they're forecasting another year of record growth going into next year. Doesn't surprise me. The next time you see every Resident Evil game on sale on Steam, just remember this, and you're part of the 60 million. You're probably about 1 million of them just through rebuying everything. Yeah, just do I have 3-4 on every platform?
So very true. I am sat here waiting for it to go because I have this kind of thing that I like everything on Steam as a backup. So I sit here waiting for gold editions or whatever the version is to drop down to a point. And I'm like, I'm going to pick that up on a whim, even though I've got it on PlayStation, and I want them on my Switch as well. So it's a whole thing.
Next year, if Capcom don't get that record growth, I'm going to be coming to you. I'm going to say what happened. You didn't buy the gold super turbo edition of Requiem. But no, fantastic.
Give me a chance. I will.
Give him a chance if they release it. But we'll wrap there, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at a few more light-hearted, quick stories that have happened this week in the world of games. And we are back with this week's rapid rundown. First story of the week is that I nearly slipped on it earlier, but this news around digital sales being so high for Capcom. We've also got the PS5 and PS4 data for the last quarter, and 85% of sales on PS5 and PS4 were digital. So, and this is a point I was going to make before, not that I need to, because I think we know it now, but it really is the case that if you're on the physical side of things, you are a clear minority in terms of how you're accessing games and how you're playing them.
I haven't looked at this.
I feel like I know the point you might make.
Do you?
Maybe, yeah.
Well, there's actually 2 points. The first is how many of them are in-app purchases.
Yeah.
Like, how much of this is...
I should have said that.
Just Fortnite.
As soon as I shut my mouth, I knew that was going to come back.
Yeah. How much of this is just Fortnite? And then to go to Capcom's side of it, if the same percentage was driven by digital... Was it digital or sales that drove that on Capcom?
With Capcom... Wait,
it was
I don't
sales,
know...
wasn't it? Well, we don't... Yeah, okay.
We don't know the specifics. Okay, 93% of games that they sold were digital. We don't know any more than that.
So, I mean, it is this kind of shift. I mean, it makes sense that, there's so many people that are downloading things, 1, for free and then buying things in the game. 2, that you can only buy digitally, the number of games that don't bother. I mean, when Alan Wake came out, that wasn't physical for ages. They did that as kind of like a thing down the line, and that was a AAA game.
Well, you look at Microsoft with I don't think Oblivion had a physical copy at launch.
No, probably not.
Indiana Jones on the Switch 2 is the only version of that game that's an actual physical copy, because it's not a game key
that
card
belongs
either.
in a museum. Sorry.
Well, it kind of does though. That's because it's Indiana Jones. Genuinely, the fact that the only physical version of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is the Switch 2 version of, and Microsoft have done game key cards for other ones. I look at the digital and I think it's not it. I imagine this is very much consumer choice. I'm not going to say it's not, but there's real.
Is it consumer choice if there is no choice to buy it physically?
And there's such a push towards it, isn't there? I mean, we've seen with Nintendo announcing that they're going to undercut physical copies on their own eShop. So they'll always sell the digital copies cheaper. And I get it. And I know we've spoken about the fact that this is what not the promise, but this is what the idea was in the first place, was that if you get it digital, you don't get to resell it, but you get it cheaper. And it really feels
they
like
don't have to ship things.
Yeah.
And they don't have to ship.
Oh yeah, there's so much saving for the manufacturer. I got a PS5 Pro early. I had the weeks of having it without getting a disk drive, but I see a future where I think definitely with what Sony and Microsoft do next, I don't think you'll be able to access a version of those systems that have disk drives built in. I don't see that being a thing anymore. You'll be able to get them as some bizarre optional extra in the world that we live in now. But to me, there's no way that either of those are going to launch with a version like the PS5 and Xbox Series X did. I just don't see it happening, because you look at the data, there's not much point.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. Yeah. Anyway, that's shock news. Digital downloads are very popular. Something else that's popular, Alex, Mouse PI for Hire. I think you will have seen the noir Bioshock-esque mouse game. Well, that launched in April, and publisher Playside have come out and said, hey, it's done so well that we've recouped all of our expenses. I can only imagine that also passes on to the developer. So, a lot of hype for this one. I've read
came out
a
of
lot
nowhere. It felt a bit like
it didn't to the people like me. I'll be honest. I not to brag, but I think I've sent you a message on Slack about this game like 3 years ago, and I will go back after and I will try and find it, because But this is one that
use of your time.
It would be a really good use of my time, just to prove I was right. But no, I think I was only aware of it because as you know, like I read my magazines. It's what I spend a lot of time on Steam just looking at stuff that's coming out. But I never thought it would do as well as it has. And I think that the reviews I've read some really good reviews. I've read some reviews that are quite critical, but I think the overall point that everyone makes is that they've gone and tried something different with the visual design, and it's paid off really well. And I think it's an obvious testament to the fact that if you can make something that stands out and really stands out and is unique, and there's nothing else that quite looks like it, you can already get your foot in the door with a lot of players, and a lot of the wider interest in the industry, I think, comes to games like this because they've looked and gone, there's nothing else that looks like this. And it's
there are other games that borrow from the same era, but it's done it really well, and obviously kind of refined it to the first person perspective. Some of the in-jokes in there I think are really clever, like the fact that, I can't remember where it is, but somewhere in the game you can find, like in the museum, like the creator of the invisible wall, so they can explain the fact that there's invisible walls in the game. Like there's smart meta jokes like that play to the crowd that are into that. My understanding was, from some of the things I read, I haven't played it, that maybe people were jumping on the wrong thing, and the game was maybe at its core a bit different in terms of what the message it was trying to portray. But that's by the by. It's incredible that it's done this well. I will say that I think when it started to build hype out, was it the Game Awards it was at? Where was it that it kind of blew up from? It was there was some.
I think it was
really
around mid last year. It was definitely it's been at a few big showcases. I think it's been in an Xbox event as well.
Yes, yeah.
But this has all been in the build up to the release. They've been very clever about.
Directly after that, it blew up kind of online, and the story started really kind of coming in about it. And then after that, I think somebody closed the window. PlaySide, there we go. Probably were like, "Oh, this is going to do well," because I couldn't turn around for ads playing on my YouTube videos popping up. Like, it does show that part of it's quality, part of it's knowing when you've got something and having the money to back it,
blasting it,
and it's paid off.
That's the point, though, isn't it? If I see a Reddit ad, I spend a lot of time on Reddit, and Reddit's very good at targeting stuff at me. Very good ads, and you see a lot of stuff for games, and what Mouse PI for Hire shows again to me is that it sells. It might not sell you on the concept, but it sells you on the idea of just the world and the visual style as soon as you see it. Like, you don't even need to see it in motion necessarily for it to immediately go, that looks to me. I think as soon as I see a screenshot, I'd go, okay, what does it look like? And then you go and watch a trailer. And I think that's so hard to do. Like, there's no easy way to turn around and be like, this is how you do that.
In a still from the game, absolutely. The number of games where it's like, behind the curtain, the number of games that I see that kind of come to me, it's like, in a still, it's like, this is just a noise to me. Like, I'm just looking at, like, this might as well be a static white noise on a screen.
We see a lot, though, and it's one of the struggles that we face is sometimes when Alex and I are working on pitching and things, and sometimes we just want to say to people, just don't read what I'm saying, just go and just go and watch it.
I mean,
watch it in
motion. There have been a couple of games recently that I've been, nothing I write about this is going to do it justice. A screenshot doesn't do it justice, because in a still, you're missing. It's the animation and the detail is what brings it out, and not just does it bring it out, but it's also that you see what's happening. Like, in a still, you can't even necessarily work out what the lead character is or what the gameplay is. Whereas you're quite right. Mouse PI for Hire is like, you know exactly what it is. Partly because of the visual metaphor of video games. You can see your gun here. There we go. That's what it looks like, doesn't it? You can see your gun at the bottom of the screen, and then the mice.
You just need the mouse ears now.
Around. Absolutely.
So, fantastic. Well done.
I always think of Roger Rabbit when I see it. That kind of is what's at the back of my mind.
That's the kind of vibe, though, isn't it? Like, it's the Cuphead, the classic, just the classic Hollywood animation of that's. I love it because it looks a little bit untidy, but it looks so good. Something else which looks good. Not proud of that segue, but it got us there. Black Flag Resynced, coming out quite soon. A remake of many people's favourite Assassin's Creed game. One of the really cool things they're doing for the marketing campaign for that is and I saw your head movement for the favourite Assassin's Creed game. Hey, I am but one man. It is my favourite.
I think it was at the launch of the PlayStation 4 kind of cycle. I just think that one of the reasons is because it was the best game out there in that window. Like, I think it got a glow up by the fact there was
nothing else.
Yeah, basically. But it was incredible.
This game is really good. It's also the only one we've got.
Yeah, I'd also say it might be the best, honestly. So I don't know why I gave any kind of head tilt.
I'd say so. But they're doing a real life treasure hunt, and the prize is worth $500,000. From what I had a look at this, it seems that it's going to be a bit of a globe trotting experience, which ends in Barbados. People at Ubisoft have claimed this will take up to 5 years to solve, but yeah, and you have to buy in to get the clues, but then they're doing an event where you can get access to it for free. So I like the idea of this. It just feels like, and I don't want to be mean to Ubisoft, but it feels like a bit of a Ubisoft have had a really good idea and they've made it really weird and complicated.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who is this for? Because it doesn't strike me as being for normal people who can solve some riddles and then jet off to the Caribbean. on a whim.
Yeah.
But cool idea.
It's really hard to feel like the stories you love when people win prizes are like how it's going to change your life. But if you've hopped off to Barbados to try and win it, you're probably all right. Probably.
Maybe. I mean, you'd still quite fancy the
I might be wrong. Maybe
the first person to correctly find the chest.
Maybe the stage before is you find the free tickets to Barbados.
Maybe. Well, we don't know.
Maybe it's all part of a single thing.
It doesn't start until November.
Right.
So there's a long way to
go. That is when the season begins in Barbados, so that makes sense.
I was going to say, plane tickets will be cheap. If you solve it really quickly.
No, that's when the season begins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know why I'm thinking it's going to be like freezing in Barbados. Well, maybe they're in cahoots with the Barbados government.
Yeah, maybe.
Boost tourism. How many more people came to find that Assassin's Creed chest? 2.
Yeah.
2 did, but my God.
One of them was
money.
Rihanna.
And the other one was, I can't even think what the head of Ubisoft's called now.
I don't know, but Cliff Richard has a house out there, so maybe it'll be him. Just the two of them fighting for this $500,000 prize.
Do you think anyone outside the UK is going to know who Cliff Richard is?
No, they won't.
No, I don't. All I know is that it was like my nana or grandma. Again, I think nana's quite an English thing, isn't it? She thought he was a good-looking man growing up.
I'm sure.
There you go, Cliff Richard.
I didn't know where that was going, but yeah, okay.
No, I didn't know. I was just trying to think of how I can add some knowledge to. But yeah, Cliff Richard is how are we? If Cliff Richard is the one to solve this, I would love that. We're all going on a summer holiday dressed as like Ezio.
That would be good.
That would be pretty cool. But yeah, that's our last story for the week. Obviously, I think it's cool. Yeah. I will always give kudos to a company in Ubisoft's position doing something a little bit weird, off the wall with its marketing campaign. Although I think the fact that it doesn't even start till so long after launch is a bit odd, unless they're planning to do something with the game around November. But it just feels a bit. It comes out in a month.
They've announced it now. They get the stories off the announcement. If it's 5 years till it ends, I mean,
Well, they've claimed it could take 5 years.
Okay,
but that seems a long time to solve 15 riddles.
Yeah,
maybe they just don't have answers.
That would work.
Yeah, and then they just go in like 5 years and just go and grab it.
If we know the end is going to be in Barbados, couldn't you just go to Barbados now to start
sweep the whole
around?
island?
It's not a huge island.
I imagine it's probably not there yet, but you have a point, maybe. Because by the time it is, just search the whole island. How big can it be?
It's not
How
huge.
big is Barbados? I just need to find out how big it is. Okay. It's 0.2% the size of the UK. Honestly, if anyone's listening in November, you could probably get a team of like 10 people and go and find this. Potentially. But on that note, I think we'll end the episode before. I feel Alex is now doing Barbados research. And
yeah.
We'll wrap things here while he's doing that. I'll let him do that. I'll do the promos. If you have enjoyed today's episode, I hope you have, please do give us a like. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from and leave us a comment, if you will, telling us what you thought about the episode or if you've got any opinions on the stories we have covered today. If you're interested in more from BGM, more from the weekly download, we also have the weekly download newsletter, which is available via LinkedIn. And we also have the daily download 5 days a week, which you'll find the link to in the description below. Now, Alex, I've done the promos, so would you like to come with your fact of whatever it's going to be?
This kind of goes on for you, actually, because it's 21 miles at its longest point, which, is less than the marathons you run.
That's true.
And 14 miles across. Manageable. Where that all gets a bit confusing is when you put it all together, it's 193 square miles, which feels a little harder to search for your prize on.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be doing it on my own.
Okay.
If you take 100 people,
right,
it's $5,000 each.
Yeah, I'm like, we're really watering this down.
Yeah, if it guarantees you get it, what's 1% of nothing?
What if you don't? What if you still don't?
Yeah, but you're not paying for them to get their way there, are you? They're paying for themselves. I'm not like hiring an army of people off Fiverr and descending on the Caribbean, finding my way to Barbados. I'm like, get to customs, and they're like, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "So, some French person has hidden a crystal skull and gold coins somewhere here, and we're gonna find it." It's just the entire plane's just
all dressed like
I've got my metal detector.
Brilliant.
But yeah. Anyway,
there we go.
Alex, do you have any final thoughts for today?
That's all my final thoughts went into the idea of all of us going to our
I appreciate that. It was a good thought.
Yeah.
Well, then on that note, I'll say goodbye. I'll say goodbye. You can say goodbye.
I'll say goodbye as well.
He'll say goodbye, and we'll see you all next time. Goodbye. Goodbye.